Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua.
I am Lucas.
And I'm Erik.
Lucas and Erik are licensed professional counselors, and today's topic is over-scolding, which just sounds
like a tongue twister?
Scolding or something, yeah.
Yeah, so this is inspired by some notes that you had been writing, Erik, on, what was it, things parents regret?
Yeah.
Where did you get these from anyway?
I found some interesting articles off of the internet that talked about things parents regret having after they have raised their kids. And one of those is over-scolding, that they felt they over-scolded their child throughout raising them.
Just as we've there we go. We've sometimes enjoyed finding some dictionary definitions for this stuff. So I just threw up scolding, and this is, who is this? The American Heritage Dictionary, a harsh or sharp reprimand. So it comes with a feeling of high intensity.
Right. And I know in the parenting type of material that's out there right now is that, there's just kind of one tone that you're supposed to have with parenting, and it's just kind of one type of hey, don't do that, or they'll figure it out, or give some advice. And the thing is, with parenting, you're going to have a variety of different tones and a variety of different intensities, and sometimes a variety of different volumes based on the behaviors that you're seeing.
Well, I can even think of you're playing with your kids and your volume might go up because you're having fun and being loud.
Well, see, and that's a part of it is life has changes in it with all of these different areas. If you're always coming intensely at your child, and that's kind of what this article was talking about, then you're really eliminating them hearing what it is you're trying to get them to hear. You're over scolding them and over punishing them, and so they're not really understanding any difference between the different things that they're doing.
Well, I almost even hear, let me look at this definition again, a reprimand. Yeah, okay. I can envision a situation where a person is scolding, but it only ever ends up being words. It's just don't you do that? But then there's not ever any actual consequence beyond the loud voice, which is kind of a different problem.
It is, using the lecture, regardless of the age.
Sure. But even if it's just short, even if it's just loud and short and don't ever do that again. But then there's no follow-up.
And there's no follow-up.
That would be
there's
a problem.
and follow-up is also explaining, why is that bad?
Could be. Yeah,
in
absolutely.
The parenting manual, I put in there, use your tone intensity for things that are very dangerous. Things that your child knows, oh my gosh, this was something that my mom or my dad really had some strong feelings about. I've had parents feel bad about, they yelled at their kid as they were about to step out in front of a car and they shouldn't have yelled. I'm like,
no.
Johnny, stop. Johnny, stop.
Right.
Stop. Does not have the same intensity as Johnny, stop. Stop. Because you're trying to save their life.
Sure. Yeah. Kid walking out in front of a car. I think there's so many things that would be entirely acceptable to avoid that happening.
Right. And a part of the over-scolding is rather than get on your kid's level and work with your child in different ways with different tools, those parents were just using the pick up your toys, don't spill that milk, put your dish back.
For everything.
Everything. Now, granted, there are going to be parents who are going to say, oh my gosh, I've gotten to that point. But you may have gotten to that point after 15 times saying the same thing in nice or different tones. That's different. But if your first thing with the kid is to simply go that intensity, now you're over scolding them, and they don't know how to be able to understand that intensity. And so
that's the new normal.
That's the new normal.
We have a little police car right now that our son is fascinated with, and you press the thing and the siren goes, and it just goes indefinitely until you turn it off.
Oh dear goodness!
Yes, and he got in the habit of thinking that it needed to be on.
Just
yeah, like
on.
if you turned it off, he would go turn it on. But I told my wife, I said I never would have thought it, but I'm just now, I don't even hear it.
You're
like,
almost
like I can just watch
desensitized
TV,
to it.
I can enjoy life, I don't even hear it, and that's kind of sounds like
Just
the
a
same thing by
screaming
being
siren.
at that top level.
Exactly.
Eventually, the kid's just like, I don't even hear you
I
anymore.
don't even hear you anymore. Yeah, no
Yeah.
joke. From a super practical perspective.
Well, and that's, a part of being able to, connect and discipline your child is that relationship.
Yeah.
So they learn the different ways that different things affect you. If it's all one intensity all the time, then, between, cheating in school versus sneaking an extra cookie, it's just the same intensity. So if they're going to get that same intensity, that's where, kids had a tendency to get themselves into more trouble because it's just going to be the same thing no matter what they do.
So you've got a note here that says, some parents believe that the higher expectations are for their children, the more successful they will be in the future.
That's a whole podcast in and of itself.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, I'll just piece that out.
No, I think we should touch on it, but I think we should also.
We can't do nested podcasts.
Well, it's not going to be
podcast
nested,
within a
but we're
podcast.
gonna touch a little bit on that. And that's true that there is this belief that the tougher a parent is on the child, the more successful that they will be. And the problem with that is that human beings are not cookie cutter. So there are some kids, some human beings that might actually be true for, but not for all. It's going to be a small slice. And generally what happens is when you're tough on your kid all the time to make them more successful, you end up crushing them. They end up getting to adulthood going, I can't do anything right anyhow. I've always been told that. So, screw it. I'll just do whatever I want. And then they don't have the expectations or the self-confidence within themselves.
Note to self, avoid crushing your children.
Avoid crushing your children at all costs. Avoid crushing your children.
So what do you do because I remember like as a child, I just felt like there were some adults in my life. Fortunately, it wasn't necessarily my parents, but that just always started at 100%. And so what do you do if you do fear like, oh, I'm one of those people. I may have just been at 100%. How do you reset that with your kid, and how do you control yourself?
Well, for one, see if anyone else on an adult level has said anything like that to you before, and then kind of talk to them and think about what they've said. If you're not able to go much farther than that, then you might want to get a counselor. Or someone that you really, really trust and will listen to, and just really begin to talk about that with them, and you've got to get yourself to an open place where you can hear what they're going to say and it not be, I'm a bad person, because there's more than likely messages or ways you've been parented, which can be the source of those messages as to where that's coming from. And you've got to get to the root of those pieces to be able to change them. And then you get to decide what it is that you want those messages to be coming from you.
Definitely hear your counselor coming out, because that's like counseling session stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
What else do you have here? Over scolding can lead to bad behavior. I think that's just kind of what you were talking about if you raise expectations too high, the kid's just going to be like, well, screw it, I can't meet any of them.
Yep.
And so you got a note here that says consistent punishment for poor grades can harm a child's desire for learning. So kind of like a different avenue of where this could have an impact.
Right. Well, I'm going to go back to the first one that you mentioned. Remember the formula, time plus touch plus rules equal love to a child.
And over scolding
is
unbalancing those kind of two big chunks.
What you're trying to do with rules is help mold the child to be able to control themselves in a variety of different ways in a variety of different environments. And you're trying to help them mold their own thinking so that they can be able to problem solve, cause and effect solve, so that they can be able to take on the challenges of life. Now, when you go into the grades part, if they're just going to get scolded, because you go back to parents, who are believing that, their kids, that being tough on them will make men and women out of them. what if your kid is doing the very best they can and, they get a C, they get a D, they get a B. I've had lots of kids who a B is almost like, just a deformed F. It wasn't an A, so it's an F.
Anything that's not an A
isn't. Yep.
Yeah,
But
catastrophic.
and we forget that people like Albert Einstein got C's and D's in high school.
And I think like left formal education, either was kicked out or left, if I recall.
I think so. And so what if your kid that just are so smart that the school system isn't doing well for them? But if your belief is that good grades mean everything, that A's mean everything, and I see that a lot in the counseling room, where parents believe that if you don't get the best grades you can, especially all A's,
the best grades you can, by which I mean the grades that I have decided you will get.
Exactly, the grades that I will decide you will get. I've had, parents who said, my kid is, getting C's and D's, and that's just not acceptable. They can do A's. And I'm like, well, have they ever done A's? No, but they can do it if we apply the right pressure.
If we apply the right pressure.
Applied a lot of pressure.
It's not working.
Because right now, your son is completely grounded from everything and has been for a long time, and this is his senior year, and you're saying he can do it, and it's worked, kind of, maybe, or should. And I've had other parents who are like, yeah, they should be getting all A's. This is very, very important. And they had, programs put in place for them. But then when they were getting the A's and they were achieving the programs, well, that was going to cost too much, so they should just do it on their own. The kids look at me and go, what's the point then?
So many knobs there that could use adjusting in that short sentence you just delivered.
Well, and that's where we have to look at it. In my graduate program, I got a B. I am more proud of that B. I worked for that B than any of the A's that I had gotten. And it's only a grade. I mean, it's not reflective truly of the material that you've gone over. And I know that's the theoretical piece behind it, but there are some people that the best they're going to be able to do is not going to hit A's, and that's because that's not their great focus of interest.
Sure.
I knew a genius who got out of Iran. He was a professor in a college, and in his areas, he had a photographic memory.
For the stuff he was interested in?
For the stuff more than he was interested in, the stuff he was gifted in. Okay. He could give you any term paper you came up with in those areas. He could give you three sources to go to, and he could give you all the information to get the source. So the title, the author, the publisher, and the year it was published. It was all burned into his mind, and all he had to do was look at it once. In the areas that weren't his, he could not remember things to save his life.
Sure.
Couldn't do it. In fact, to get out of the country that he, came from, he actually had to cheat in those areas to get out because he couldn't remember no matter how much he had studied. And so it's a really good example there that human beings have a lot of differences, and grades may not be the best thing to just look at and say, this is what's going to make you successful in life.
Right. Well, I'm going to echo a thing that you've said a lot, is it sounds like it's that fundamental principle of know your child and pay attention to who is this human being that I'm raising. What are their skills and abilities? And I need to not be simply trying to copy and paste myself over top of them, because despite the fact that they are, a great part of my DNA, they are not me.
Right. They're different. Is it really that important to have that bumper sticker that says my child is an honor roll student?
Heck, You could just buy the bumper sticker.
You could just buy the bumper sticker.
And yeah, I feel like it didn't matter if I was in elementary school, the grade, like every time I was moving, like the grades are the most important thing because it's going to matter so much when you get to junior high. It's going to matter so much
for
when
the
you get
next
to high
step.
school. It's going to matter so much when you whatever. And then it's like no one's asked to see my grades for a long time.
I think the hardest part of my education, and I have a master's degree, admittedly, but I think the hardest part of my education was my undergrad. And then I got into my master's degree and I went, I don't know, this is kind of like more of the same, if not maybe a little easier, because it was specifically focused on the thing I knew I wanted to do, rather than like you have to take this elective, elective in astrophysics, which I don't care about. So like, that whole thing of like, it's going to prepare you. It's going to prepare. I think school is sometimes harder than real life. Like, have you met homework? Right. Like, life doesn't necessarily have as much homework.
And then
as
that's
some
one of the
schools do.
reasons I really like a lot of the stuff that like Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy, has done. And, saying, hey, there's some jobs where, you have to have a certain degree. There's other jobs.
He's got a 4-year degree. So, I mean, he's like,
and there's other things where that doesn't really mean anything. It's about having a particular skill and being skilled at something and learning how to do it. And you can do that without... you just go learn to do the thing. And they're all valuable.
I have a client who's the happiest he's ever been because he works for a drilling company. And he says, I always liked to play in the dirt as a kid. And now I get to do it for a living. And he didn't know how to do the job before the company that he's currently working for gave him a shot. It was nothing about his education.
Do you guys know what Mike Rowe did before he was doing things like Dirtiest Jobs?
Well, he's like an actor and has like an acting degree, right?
He spent 8 years on Broadway as a pirate in the Pirates of... I'm going to get the word Penzance.
Oh, is it Pirates of Penzance?
Penzance.
I don't know anything about it, but I know how to say it.
8 years.
Wow.
As a pirate.
That was his thing.
Yeah. That was his thing. And I'm going to go to the college piece too, because in my undergrad, I remember getting into different classes, the general classes in the first couple of years. And other students were in there going, man, I'm going to have to take this class again. And I'm like, dude, are you flunking? And they're like, no, I'm not flunking.
I'm just going to get a B.
I'm going to, I took it once and I got a C and I'm taking it again and I should be getting an A, but I'm getting a B. So I'm going to have to take it again to be able to get an A. And I'm like, do you really like this class? And they're like, no,
I hate it.
You have to have an A average to get into grad school. I'm like, oh, you must be pre-med. And they're like, no, I'm not that smart. Oh, then you're going to go to Harvard. No, I'm not going to go to Harvard. Then why do you think you need to get all A's? And they're like, because that's how it works. I'm like, have you been talking to the registrar's office? Because I'm pretty sure that every time you take this class, they make money.
I was going to say $50,000 later.
I'm like, well, who's giving you this advice? Like, well, it's the counselors, the career counselors. They say that you have to have this to go anywhere beyond a graduate undergrad level. And I said, no, it's not true unless you're really going into medical or nursing, and that's because it's such a high demand.
Or Harvard Law or something.
Harvard Law, and they're like, oh, no, you have to do that. I'm like, hey, look, I'm not doing it. I'm not taking classes over. And so when I, interviewed for, our graduate program, they took one look at my transcripts, which, and then they went, oh, okay. And then they asked the questions. My transcripts had 2 Fs, 1 complete, and 2 Ds.
An incomplete?
And I got into graduate school. It didn't matter. And that's the thing, is that the grades don't matter nearly as much as what the pressure is put on. That's a whole system in and of itself, and then money is the bottom line.
And we're just talking to the particular experience of a parent who has a hyper focus on grades. This is a potential problem a parent could have of having expectations that are too high. We could probably do a whole nother podcast on sports.
We should. Definitely.
But probably not this minute. We should probably save that for the next one.
We'll save it.
I'm taking notes.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, so I think that the main message here is, maybe back off of being a 100% just intense off the hook.
Well, like, know your kid.
Yeah.
And have high expectations but yeah, it has
Well,
to be moderated.
have
yeah.
your expectations.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
they don't have to be high expectations, because they can just be expectations. The expectation is when you finish, you know, your dinner at the table, that you take your plate into the kitchen and put it in the sink.
Mhm.
However that works, that's an expectation. You know, it's not high, it's not low. It's just there.
There you go. Well, we have courses similar to this one and things on our website. So make sure that you check that out at empoweringchoices.community. And then we'd really appreciate it if you enjoyed this episode to leave a comment, leave a like wherever you're watching or listening to this. And we will see you on the next show.
And if you don't subscribe, you have to go to your room.
Wow.